Welcome, everyone, to this week's edition of Military Trailblazer Office Hours. Thanks so much for taking time out of your Wednesday evening to spend it here in the spirit of community, mentorship, and learning. I'm your host, Dave Nava. I'm a lead solution engineer at Salesforce and a military trailblazer. Each week, we invite a co-host, or in this case, 3 co-hosts, to take part in the conversation so that we can leverage their experience, their expertise, and of course, their unique perspectives. The focus for tonight's session is exploring the B2B and B2C career paths and enablement resources. So if you've ever wondered what B2B and B2C stands for, what these career paths are like, or how to prepare for them, this is the session for you. I'd like to welcome and briefly introduce our co-host panel for tonight's session, Taylor Grimes, Allison Park, and Divya Alavarthi. Taylor is a 14-time certified multi-cloud architect at Salesforce. When she's not designing solutions in the Salesforce ecosystem, Taylor gives back to a number of organizations, including Maravis, Ladies Be Architects, and the Salesforce Equality Network. Allison is a 15-time certified principal enterprise architect at Salesforce. She's worked on the Salesforce platform since 2010, is a Salesforce MVP alumnus, and volunteers as a program manager for Rad Women, which teaches women how to program on the Force.com platform. Divya is the director of the Enterprise Architect program at Salesforce. She's been with Salesforce for over 7 years and has a professional background that includes consulting, programming, field enablement, and customer success. It is awesome having all of you co-hosting Office Hours with me. Welcome.
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. If you could each take a moment to introduce yourselves further and share your Salesforce stories, that would be awesome. Taylor, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. So like David mentioned, my name is Taylor Grimes. I have lots of certifications, and I have been doing Salesforce since the very beginning of my career. I was working with Salesforce as an intern. So in college, similar economic climate where things were uncertain. And I think that Salesforce is a great way for, people new to business, new reskilling, rejoining the workforce. But it's really near and dear to my heart for, just making people aware that anyone can really learn technology and, just having path leaders that can show you how to skill up. Hopefully we can save everyone time or even eliminate some, what's the right word? Imposter syndrome to give you, sort of guidance on, if you have your eyes on a job title or a type of role in the ecosystem, the folks that are here to discuss today can each give you a unique perspective. I have been with Salesforce since actually 2020 during the pandemic. But previous to that, I was a solution consultant and worked on implementing a lot of the solutions that this enablement that we'll go over later is directly applied to. So thank you for having me, and I'm super happy to be here.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's great to have you. And to your point, Salesforce is indeed for everyone. So if you're looking to upskill and if you're interested in architect roles, great session for that. Allison, do you want to take over?
Sure. So again, Allison Park, I'm a principal enterprise architect. I actually work as a part of the pre-sales team, which means I work with our customers as they are figuring out how they want to invest in Salesforce. I help them understand their business architecture through leading workshops and working with their strategic vision and their executives, and then aligning that to what they have technically in their business, especially as it relates to the customer engagement or even partner or supplier management as well. And my Salesforce journey has been very twisty-turny, which I share because I think a lot of us can relate to that, especially those of us who are, what would you call, mid-career or experienced. I started out actually on the customer side. My very first start was as a marketing admin. And back then we had a contact management system in DOS. And I then went into sales. I didn't like sales at all, which is strange now that I'm in sales again. But I got an opportunity to start programming our then systems and found myself in IT. And then worked at a couple of different companies and found I really wanted to try my hand at consulting because it opens up a lot of opportunity, work with lots of different types of organizations. And then Salesforce knocked at my door after I had been in consulting for about 8 years. And it really, the enterprise architecture career really well aligned to my experience with both IT as well as in business, leading workshops, doing implementations, things like that. So I am trying to really condense the journey, but basically all those twists and turns that your career takes are really various tools you get in your tool chest. So that experience really starts to come to your aid as an architect, because now you've seen things from a lot of different perspectives and you can start to pull together that vision for them. So very happy to be here, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's great to have you. And to your point, that varied background that contributes to all the skills that kind of roll up into being a good architect, that provides hope for a lot of folks who may not come from a tech background, but have other experience that's equally valuable that they can then translate.
Absolutely.
So I love that point.
Absolutely. I think, I've worked with helping train up folks using Trailhead here in Chicago, where I'm based. And very often I'll get someone who says, oh, I have no IT experience. Does that mean I can't Salesforce? And I'm absolutely not. What do you have experience in doing? And guess what? That industry uses Salesforce. So there's so much opportunity, and just kind of opening their eyes to, you don't have to pretend from a resume perspective. You don't have your past experience. You should showcase it and help folks understand how that will aid you in what, your next position and your career arc takes you.
Yeah, exactly. There's such a broad base of different roles in the ecosystem. There's something for everyone. Divya, do you want to take over for us?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be here today. So just a little bit about me. Been with Salesforce for 7 years. And before joining Salesforce, I worked as an Oracle architect. So I did a lot of end-to-end Oracle ERP implementations across financial, supply chain, manufacturing. So a lot of fun stuff. And, I'm a mom of two. I have a 4-year-old and a 5-month-old, kind of a newborn phase still. It's been, my journey with Salesforce has been very interesting, and it's kind of like a funny joke too. So I was consulting, you get paid a lot when you're consulting, just go do freelancing. So I used to do a lot of that within Oracle space. And at that time, a lot of my friends used to work for Salesforce full time, they're working for the Salesforce organization, and they just wouldn't stop talking about it. They just this is incredible. It's just amazing. The culture is great. It's so hard to get in. It's a, and I'm like, okay, it's a bet. It was like a dare. And I'm like, you know what? I can come back to whatever I'm doing anytime I wanted to. So let me just go see what Salesforce is all about. And that's how I actually interviewed for a position. And when I interviewed, I genuinely had no Salesforce experience. I just know the technology a little bit. I've heard about it and the company, and that's about it. And I went and presented with my experience I had over the years. And then I was hired. I just got an update in 2 days, and I was hired. And I worked as, when my first job at Salesforce was working with our strategic partners, top 20 partners, to kind of be their success manager and help them navigate all of the implementations that they're doing with the customers. So that was like a dare. And then even after 7 years, I'm still at Salesforce. So I think I just can't leave yet. But I think that's where I relate. And within my friend circle, I have, developers, architects working on other technologies who are we wanted to try Salesforce. And I'm like, yep, there's just so many ways you could get into Salesforce. Just tell your skill set and tell where you want it to be. There's going to be a perfect path that Salesforce has laid for you to get into the ecosystem. And it has actually worked. I've actually got my husband into Salesforce, their friends into Salesforce, and there's a running joke that happens all the time. So I'm so incredibly proud to be part of Salesforce, and really looking forward to interacting with you all and sharing, my journey or anything that we could help you with.
Awesome. Yeah, 7 years, that's the longest running dare ever, but I'm glad that you're sticking with it. Well, thanks so much for sharing your stories. What we'll do here before we kick it off is I want to, for those folks that may be joining for the first time, just touch on some administrative topics so we're all kind of on the same page. I always like to explain the purpose of these office hours. So these sessions are an informal get-together for gathering with both military trailblazers and allies. Everyone's welcome to explore non-technical Salesforce career and branding related topics to help you achieve your professional development and career related goals. So for this next hour, this is your opportunity for collaborative mentorship. Everyone on the call is encouraged to step up and help both ask and answer questions from your perspective, which of course provides that diversity of experience to the answers given and a rich dialogue. Do keep your eye on the chat window during tonight's session. I've already shared our co-panelists' LinkedIn profile links, so you can connect with them. And I'll be sharing other things throughout tonight's session as well, and other folks posted there also. If you want to ask a question at any point during today's session, and I hope that you do because it's your session, Go ahead and raise your hand. If you don't feel comfortable being called on and speaking up, no worries there. Just post your question in chat and I will call on folks as I see those hands raised or those posts in chat. And then finally, tonight's session is being recorded. So if you'd like to share an attribution-free comment, just let me know before speaking and I'll make sure that my video editor edits that out of the final recording. So we'll go ahead and kick it off here. And I've got a couple questions for context to kind of set the stage so that we're all here on the same page. With regard to each of your roles, the topic of tonight's session is B2B and B2C Solution Architect programs. Can you briefly explain how you're involved with that program at Salesforce? And then from there, we're going to dig a little bit into what exactly that means. What is a B2B and a B2C Solution Architect? Anyone can answer.
Good question. I think this is why I like having Allison from a pre-sales standpoint as an enterprise architect and Divya because she works on the enablement side with me. But what we're trying to do when we've positioned B2B versus B2C solution architect is so that we can actually help people as they go into a customer engagement, be ready to speak to a scenario. Because one thing that's super important to know is that even though we play with the technology and we're really close to it, businesses at the end of the day, they buy solutions and they buy solutions that match industry language and terminology that they use. So that doesn't match our guidebooks. It doesn't match the setup menu of Salesforce in all ways. And so we try to bridge that gap. And I think the enterprise architects, that's really their bread and butter. That's what they're really, really good at in an excellent way, is not only are they technology agnostic, but they're very keen on aligning to the needs of the industry. And the enablement paths that we're going to talk about today help you, pick a route so that you don't feel like you're trying to learn everything and drink from the fire hose. But when you're dealing with B2B and you're dealing with a financial use case, what are those types of patterns and what are those scenarios? And it's really just an entry point so that you're ready to have those strategic conversations.
Awesome. Allison or Divya, do you want to pile onto that? Or?
Yeah, I think the strategic conversation is absolutely critical, especially in enterprise architecture, but I think for any organization that is approaching Salesforce. The first and foremost is, at the beginning of the enterprise architecture methodology is aligning on the strategy, understanding what the business's strategy is, and then once you understand that business architecture side and where that's pointing to, those patterns that Taylor used, that understanding how that then nicely aligns to what Salesforce can do and what other systems can do. So you can bring together that story. So I think with B2B and B2C, those are two areas or two sample areas that businesses find themselves in, business to business or business to consumer. So understanding those patterns and being able to participate in the strategic conversation. So it's not just tools for tools' sake, but rather we're aligning this tech stack to your business architecture to move it forward.
Yeah, that makes great sense. I appreciate it.
I'd like to just add a simple thing here. I think it's great, how Taylor and Allison put it together. One thing specifically, as our ecosystem grew, like as Salesforce grew with all of these different solutions, we initially only had Sales Cloud, we only had Service Cloud, and then just literally the applications, the portfolio with the mergers, with the acquisitions, it has really grown so big. There's no longer one person who could say, I only do Sales Cloud. Like I'm like incredible at Sales Cloud. I don't think in current situation, because majority of the customers have multiple Salesforce applications and clouds, and we need that extra, help for those who are getting on board. Okay, I've learned all of these applications, separately, I understand the capabilities, but then coming and bringing it to a customer use case, how do we bring all of these solutions together? And that's kind of like the space for B2B, B2C, where you already know these solutions, and then now you're moving on to to fitting it into the customer puzzle. And how do I bring it all together and literally get the maximum value out of their investment? So that's where the B2B and B2C paths lay on.
Awesome. To finish providing that context, can you just give us a scenario to draw the distinction between B2B and B2C? So what's an example of a B2B scenario, then B2C? And then I think from there, we'll kind of start talking about some of the enablement that we have.
Well, I will start by saying really it's having a strong attunement to the data model, because as we know, sometimes we've got leads, sometimes we've got person accounts. So whether you're an administrator and you're just starting on Trailhead and looking at the admin badges and working in an org, or even in a nonprofit sense, we've got a package called the Nonprofit Starter Pack, but we've got these data models that go on. And one of the key pieces of the data model is following the people and the individuals. Because at the end of the day, whether it's a business that deals with consumer audiences, partners, dealerships, all these networks of people, they have a lot of data that they need to orchestrate, and our understanding of how to leverage the right tables and data sets and out-of-the-box capabilities helps us recommend the right patterns. And so when you're just starting out as an admin, you might always use, one set of pre-factored, pre-built data model capabilities, but it starts to get advanced when you deal with customers that already have Salesforce or acquire a company, and they have their own sets of customizations or features of the products that they use. So knowing how to delineate and pull back the picture and talk about data in terms of business relationships and the types of business relationships for an industry helps you when you try to scale that out and talk about consumer data, which can often get very, very large and have a lot more considerations on, compliance and things of that nature. So I would say it's really the cornerstone to being a good architect is being ready to have that data-centric conversation and then target it to building out your groups of people.
Gotcha. Okay. So
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to double down on what Taylor said on the data model. I think that sometimes organizations kind of take it for granted, and I have seen scenarios where folks decide, I'm gonna use what comes out of the box in Salesforce, and then as they start working with it, they're really having a hard time with that data model. Many times they didn't actually consciously make the decision about using person accounts, not using person accounts, using a household model, those kinds of things. You see that more in B2C, but I just wanted to kind of bring that real life is those are things you'll see out in the wild where they didn't think about those things, or they got farther down the path and realized, oh shoot, we made the wrong decision. So figuring out how to manage that is really critical for success.
Yeah, that makes sense. Stepping in as the trusted advisor to provide that overarching strategic guidance for the solution. I wanted to start to kind of broach the topic of enablement. And so for folks that are out there that may be new and they're thinking about pursuing an architect career path, what resources are currently available to support technical skilling along these two career paths?
And so I wanted to start with a website, which I'm sure you've been over many times, but if this is your very first time, I always like to have a beginner's lens. But on Trailhead, we have a roles page that helps set the landscape of the different types of jobs that you could try to specialize in. So, if you haven't looked through this, I'll put this link in the chat so that you can follow along. But essentially, our architect persona is a newer role that Salesforce is starting to support. So before we just had admin, and a lot of folks that were in the ecosystem would say, oh, I'm an accidental admin. I didn't pick this job. And I think that architects are in a similar boat as well, but there's also people that come from different ecosystems. So I think specifically talking to the military audience, I know that there's tons of different types of jobs where, you're used to technology and you're used to these concepts. And so just knowing that there are divergent ways to become an architect should maybe alleviate some imposter syndrome, because you don't have to know every capability to be an architect, but you do need to have a broad set of skills. And this page here, where we go over, what is an architect, there's a lot of different levels. But what we're going to talk about today is domain specific. And when Salesforce says domain, we really mean business domain. So that could be sales, service, marketing. There's always sales, service, and marketing in any company. Every company does those three things. Whether you go so far as to say sales, service, marketing, service, field service, dispatch, whatever your industry says, there's always sales, service, and marketing. So our certifications tend to take industry-specific scenarios, discuss a domain and a business capability in agnostic terms. So that just means we're not going to get specific to the Salesforce products and features. We're going to talk about what is the business trying to achieve. So that helps broaden folks from different backgrounds, that your business experience is just as important as it is to know the products. And our solution architect certifications, that's where we take multi-cloud, multiple products, multiple system landscapes, and we try to build a picture that helps you be strategic leaders so that you can make recommendations to point and direct to the right accelerated capabilities that our tech stack within Salesforce can provide for. So this is a look at that pyramid. So I know a lot of people are always like, I want to get to the top of the mountain. I want to be a certified technical architect someday, and that might be a goal that you ascribe to on a 10-year plan. I think just recently there was someone in the Salesforce organization in the EA group, Allison or Divya, you might be aware, but he joined Salesforce from a different background, and I think that he had a record turnaround in becoming a CTA, and it was a matter of like 4 or 5 years. Tony Malenza, did I say his name right? I worked with him once though, but he came from the financial sector. Extremely smart, but it takes a really long time to be a certified technical architect. But for goal setters, I know that, there is a way. So don't think it will take forever. Some people go through it really fast. But our domain architects, we've got application architects, which this has a set of credentials below it that you'll see in this picture. And we have system architects that may know how to connect capabilities across systems. So these are specialization patterns, but they also serve to how to become a B2B solution architect. So I'll show you both the enablement paths for B2B and B2C, but we've seen these two certification paths be a way for folks that maybe they had their eyes on a technical architect at some point, but they've really specialized and found a sweet spot working with customers. And so these are two additional paths that help you on your way to CTA, or if you're happy with where you're at and you want to show your domain expertise creating solutions for the industries.
Yeah, I appreciate that kind of the hierarchy of the different certifications and the paths. Before you move on, I wanted to touch on a couple things. So obviously, whether you decide to become a B2B, B2C architect or a CTA, there's a broad base of technical skills that you have to have. And I think everyone knows that. But oftentimes, if you're coming from outside of the ecosystem, specifically a different industry, it can be challenging knowing where to go to learn the business knowledge, which is equally as important. And you mentioned that during your discussion of what resources can learners leverage to upskill in that business knowledge area for the B2B and the B2C related industries.
So we have a Vidyard hub for B2B and B2C. And so I'll paste these in the chat here. These videos were created so anyone can take advantage of them. We tend to support our partner ecosystem. So if there is language about partners, just know that this is publicly accessible. So it's all okay if you are just learning and poking around. But these two pages, we've got lots of videos on these Vidyard hubs. And I'll pull this up on my screen here just to showcase it. But both programs have a series of all of our architecture meetups. So if you're looking to, meet more folks like Allison and Divya and myself, We have interviewed people from across the board, whether they're Salesforce architects working in our professional services or our partner ecosystem, or even our customer architects. We like to have conversations with those architects and learn from them, and also share out design patterns and solutions that they've solved. So you can see some hands-on learning labs about use cases and key solutions, but these are all available, and then you can check those out, but they all tie back to the certifications that we were just sharing. And I also wanted to talk about our learning journeys. And these, I would say, if these are the links on this page are intended for partners, but if you are looking for, a visualization of planning a learning map, this acts as a good mind map. So, we've got product specific solutions. So like sales and service, our platform, commerce cloud, marketing cloud. So whether you want to go broad, like our multi-cloud learning paths that we'll take a look at, or you want to go super specific and learn about a product, these will help you with trail mixes, trails on Trailhead, and other types of content like these video series that should help you accelerate and learn from others that are on a similar journey, because most of us are not coming in completely brand new. We have other relevant industry knowledge that, we're looking how to fill in gaps. So think of these as a model, not necessarily like, I have to do every single thing on this list. Just think of it as a model.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate the resources. I wanted to ask a quick follow-up question.
Yeah.
Frequently, I take our community's questions in LinkedIn prior to the session so I can get a feel for what folks want to talk about. And someone had posed the following question: is this a viable career path for those without developer skills? Because I think, myself included, get a little bit nervous, with writing code. And so just kind of wanted to gauge what level of development skills you would have to pursue either a B2B and or B2C career path.
I'd love to take that one because I've had folks ask me that question before of, I specifically am on my journey to get my CTA, and I've shared that, and folks said, I think you need to be a developer. You do not need to be a developer. Very often having that admin background is a superpower, because those are the things where you're looking over the org, you're understanding how things fit together. You're much closer to the business very often than developers. And I think that's the more critical thing as an architect, is really the state of mind, the architect way of thinking, if you will, the mindset, more so than, hey, I've developed code. On the Salesforce platform, I'm certainly a very proud rad grad, being also part of the leadership team. So what we do is we teach women how to code over the course of 10 weeks. It absolutely helped me in completing one of the prerequisites, the Dev 1 certification. But beyond that, I can read code okay, but I don't sit down and code. But I haven't found that has been, and certainly in many of my enterprise architect brethren, we are aware of code, we understand code, but we are not coders. So I don't think that should ever stand in your way. I think there is that perception. You have to be like, developer with this under your belt. I've actually talked with very good developers who said, in some ways, being a developer makes you think of approaching a problem like a developer instead of as an admin or an architect. So I would say that it's certainly not a prerequisite. It can be a strength because you're coming from a different perspective.
Yeah, that's helpful. And I know that at least one of those paths has PD1 or Platform Developer 1 there. And so I just wanted to point out to folks that don't be, I guess, put off by the developer in the title. You can actually earn that with zero code background. I am not a coder, and I was able to knock it out. It took me about 6 months, but once I got the concepts in my head, there's no coding required for the test. You just have to understand the structure of code, which is certainly learnable, even if you have no background in it. So just wanted to highlight that, and I appreciate that, Allison. So this is definitely open for everyone. And I'll turn it back over to you, Taylor. I think you were getting ready to talk about some more enablement resources.
Yeah, so I just like to share this because it's such a good guide across every single product. and just cross mix that with your strategy for building out a trail mix and an approach. One piece of content that I shared was a link to this article. This is a very special article. I don't know how many exist like this or how many other programs have anything like this, but we decided to release all of the content that I shared in this picture. So all of these courses were written for partners only, but in this article, if you scroll down, the content is available here. So everything in the foundational courses specifically, I would recommend for all audiences. These are going to be relevant and help you no matter where you are at in your learning journey. And then if you're looking for multi-cloud use cases or industry use cases, you can expand these sections and learn about other types of capabilities. So all the content on this article, if you had the prerequisites, it would prepare you for sitting for the exam, but it would also help you if you are planning on taking a different type of path, like our Salesforce strategy designer, user experience designer, those two certifications from our design community, which I don't believe those ones have prerequisites. They follow a lot of the framework in the foundational courses. So it's a lot about journey mapping, business process mapping, and getting the business to think about a change. So all of these courses here will help you if you're looking to, have more than just the admin credential or the associate credential to differentiate yourself. I would try for those strategy designer certifications. And I'll show you how to find that too. So the Salesforce designer persona, this is another new one that Salesforce announced in the last year. But the user experience designer and the strategy designer are really like junior solution architect level skills. It's a foundational capability, and I think it just builds. Like if you're a business analyst or you're a designer and you deal with user experiences, all of these are key questions that, whether you're an enterprise architect or a solution architect, we want you to have these skills too. So all of your skills sort of cluster and build like a snowball.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. We do have a question in chat, and it's Armin. This is your question. What about business analyst or project manager? And so, did you want to expand on that? Are you asking if you're in the business analyst or project manager role, would you be well suited to transition to that architect path? Is that kind of a gist?
We're right. They were talking about it was not developer per se, but you needed an overall view of the business. So I was asking, what about, business analyst or project manager, that you've done for plus 25 years?
Yeah. So Taylor, Allison, Divya, would that be a good baseline of knowledge?
I can shed some knowledge there. And this is also in general, as you look at these B2B, B2C solution architect roles or anything that we have, think about it as there's a set of skills that are needed for you to be successful in your role. And those skills or capabilities that we call is what we enable them on. Ideally, for example, if an admin wants to become a B2C solution architect or a business analyst wants to become a B2C solution architect, we haven't created these paths for all of these different roles existing in Salesforce. But in general, for example, I'm working on an enterprise architect program where we do focus both on business and technology, right? Where it's not technology first. We talk about business, we talk about customer, we talk about the journey that they take. We've built, like, say, a set of 10 courses as part of business architecture. Everything we talk there is about capabilities that a business analyst could understand, a business architect or functional architect could understand. We talk about the capabilities that Salesforce provides, not so much about the specific feature in a specific Salesforce tool is going to do this, but we talk about the overall capabilities that these clouds or applications offer. So that's a common language that anybody, despite the technology, you can understand. So when you look at becoming any of these architects, there's a given skill set. And if you want to take the certification route, that's where you start with the prerequisite. We really expect As a business analyst, you can do the admin. That gives you the most basic code, like, the admin configurations. And from there, you move on to taking the additional certifications and then taking on the additional journeys. And that's what those pyramids are. Those prerequisites are for you to take on to get to become there. So any pyramid that you see, any skill sets you see, that's like, this is the skills that we need for someone to be a solution architect. And then all of these enablement journeys for you.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for the question, and thanks so much for the answer, Divya. And I think that the broader question, and this was posed again in LinkedIn, if you could talk about, because no one rolls right into a B2B or B2C solution architect role like from transition, right? There's a career trajectory that takes place there where they develop a baseline of experience in different roles. Can you talk about some entry-level roles that prospective or future B2B and B2C solution architects could pursue, and kind of what a typical career trajectory might look like for those paths?
That's a good question. I think that our Salesforce consultant role, if you heard Divya mention, she was a consultant before she worked at Salesforce. I was a consultant before I worked at Salesforce too. And I think one of my other friends that works on Trailhead, actually, on the technical side of Trailhead, builds the infrastructure. We said being in consulting was like going to college. Because you see, when I click the consultant credentials, it looks like we have everything here. Consultants end up touching so many more products, so many more business transformations, and you learn so much so quickly. But no, you don't always want to be in college. Sometimes you want to slow down. You want to stop the learning or stop the accelerated learning. But I would suggest for someone who wants to go really broad and really deep fast, the best way to do it is to get into consulting. And there's tons of companies that will hire you, even if you're just a business analyst or a project manager and you have the desire to get, hands-on keys. So there's definitely a role for everyone. And we've got our Talent Alliance program that offers things similar to what David's doing is, we tell you about one path, or we tell you about one of these credentials. And if you're there and you've, shown interest and you've done all the right things, we try to connect you with partners that are hiring folks that, can pass one of these credentials so that you can get, directly working with customers within a year.
And I wanted to add, I think Taylor was spot on there. These architect certifications we've showed, it is with an expectation that you have probably 6 to 7 years of experience. So it's not like a beginner journey that you would take. It's more for the experienced individuals. I just wanted to lay it out there. This broad spectrum of consultant, the admin, the app builders that we have, that's kind of more the beginner level. But anything you saw with the architect is with the expectation that you already have experience on the platform, worked for a few years on the Salesforce platform, and then wanted to really solidify your skills.
Yeah, that's helpful context. And I think a lot of the folks on the call are consultants or have a consulting background. So that's helpful to know that that's a good entry-level role to build that baseline of skills. And I know we've talked a little bit about some of the technical requirements from a certification standpoint and business knowledge. What are some soft skills that are really critical in these roles that you'd like to encourage folks to maybe look into to develop a broad base in?
I'll speak to the soft skills. I think emotional intelligence is absolutely critical. Very often as an architect, you are working with executives to folks hands-on, a broad range of roles, different types of companies that are in different growth trajectories, especially if a business is contracting, they can be under a lot of stress. So helping, have those communications and being sensitive to that person's role and that person's position and stress or not that they are under. Emotional intelligence will create that ability to kind of fit to the situation rather than coming in and just, top to bottom having having structure. So that empathy and emotional intelligence is very important. In fact, in my Salesforce Enterprise Architecture group, that's something that we talk about a great deal when we approach customers, is having that understanding and that sympathy as you walk into their office and start working with them, even if it's virtual, to have those kinds of skill sets, those soft skills. They are as important as the technical skills.
That's great to know. And I know as a previous consultant, I've definitely been in sprints and in retrospectives where it was emotional. So being able to relate to the customer's frustration, the customer's excitement, definitely helps solidify that relationship. Taylor, did you want to cover some of the basics here? And then I think after that, we'll pause for a quick group photo.
Awesome. So I wanted to call out our Architect Digital Home. I think the resources here are so cool. This was not knowledge that was easy to find in one place before this website was announced. It's only been around for about a year. But our decision guides, our architecture basics, there was an old wiki that was on the dark web that somebody wrote that was like, hey, here's how you thread everything together. Here's what it all means. I think that if I would have had a document like this, I would have just been ready to answer every objection and tackle every question if I had something like this. So read through these. Our platform multi-tenant architecture really gets into the ins and outs of how the system works and shows you how to actually communicate in a standard way. So if you're using language that you find in these documentation, it is, synonymous across industries. It helps you level up the language that you use. If you're preparing for interviews, you're not going to get, called off guard if you hear a word that sounds like a developer language. I think the awareness factor of just knowing what's out there will help eliminate a lot of imposter syndrome and give you that industry jargon so that you're ready to talk like a systems integrator, no matter what your skill level.
Yeah, that's great. And for folks that may be watching the YouTube recording when this is released, if you're looking for all of these great links, I have saved them and they'll be available in the resources on the channel, so you will not miss out. This is fantastic. We've got about 15 minutes left. And so I wanted to dig into a couple more things. So there's so many different skills, not just the technical skills across the range of products or soft skills, there's business knowledge. Sometimes it can be overwhelming. How do architects, B2B, B2C architects, stay up to date on everything they have to know? Like, what are some productivity tips so that you're able to be innovative despite the rapid pace of change?
So at Salesforce, we leverage what's called individual development plan. And I love the quote. It's probably been misattributed over the years, but it's like, if you don't have a vision for yourself, you're going to live someone else's dream. And I think, we can get an autopilot sometimes. So make a vision for yourself and hold yourself accountable with a couple goals and revisit those goals and build a trusted network of folks that will, help you and give you feedback. And don't take feedback from everyone. Thank you. All feedback's a gift, but you don't need to take it to heart. Find people that are rooting for you and be willing to share with them, a big vision that you have for yourself.
I wanted to add one thing there. Literally, sometimes it's overwhelming of how many things are coming up. There's just so much innovation. And it's so hard for one person to know it all. So it's okay to say no. It's okay to say that I don't know this, and take time to learn about it. And I think that's where Salesforce does an incredible job, where we're trying to constantly enable, and that's why a lot of focus on the enablement too. And one of the most important things when I do my job and I'm like, okay, beyond getting paid for what I'm doing, how am I really helping somebody? So I believe that I'm kind of making a difference in a consultant's life, which is chaotic as it is. And they're stuck doing something, and maybe something that we've built in terms of enablement could make things easier for them. Go there. Oh, this is something, they're training us on. So basically the idea is that it's okay to say, you know what, I don't know about this. Let me figure it out. And then get there with whatever goals you have. But in a day-to-day as a consultant, as an architect, there's always going to be challenges, and it's so much. One person cannot know everything, so it's okay. Just keep whatever you're interested in, whatever you're passionate about, just keep going. And we, from our end, like try to do our job and, make things a little bit easier for you in that journey.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And then one of the things that I do as a solution engineer, because we have to have a pretty decent base of product knowledge, is I'll keep a knowledge repository. So even though I may not in any one point remember all the things I'm supposed to know, it's all cataloged and organized either in a list or a Google Drive or Google Drive Analyst, so that I know where to go to relook up the information that I used 6 months ago to build that one demo that was really cool. I don't have to go figure it out again. So I would just encourage folks, whether you're a consultant, it doesn't really matter what your role is, create your own knowledge base, your own knowledge system that you can look at to very quickly find answers to the questions. And when you do something really cool, like you code something or you write an awesome formula, save it in a way you can easily find it. And then later when you have to use it again, because you will, you'll be able to locate it. You can do that in Salesforce. You can create an app for that. That's what I do. All right. Just want to head back over. So, we talked about kind of the enablement. We've talked about soft skills. I wanted to focus a little bit on the industry. What does the industry need look like for these paths? And if you're able to, can you comment a little bit on kind of the employment trends that you're seeing? Is this a growth area? Is it something that's brand new that's just starting out? Like where's the future of these architect paths?
So I don't think that they're going anywhere anytime soon. I think that the need for architects is only growing. And I know that customers, even in the mid-market range, having an in-house architect is becoming almost a desired skill. I've seen so many different job titles of, folks that start in Salesforce and understand how to connect it across a business landscape, end up owning, technical applications across the whole business just because they were helpful and knowledgeable about the capabilities of the Salesforce platform. But I definitely think multiple domain connected capabilities are going to differentiate you if you want to move higher and higher up these type of tiers that our certifications showcase. And, don't feel like you have to stay married to an industry. If you like learning all of the things and going all of the directions, you definitely can with Salesforce. But if you feel comfortable and you like specializing, I would say stick with where you're happy with the type of customers that make you happy. So some people love working with government accounts, or some people love working with our education accounts. Stay where you're happiest, because there's an industry that needs you to be, knowledgeable and communicate for that industry.
Yeah, it's interesting that these skills can be applied across a broad industry base. Allison, were you going to say something?
I was just going to add that, I can count at least a half dozen conversations in the last 6 months with customers where they're looking for architects, or they may articulate it as admin/developer/architect. And I always counsel them of like, wait, whoa, that's a unicorn. They don't exist. But because they are distinct roles and you can't really kind of squish them all into one person, but having an architect that leans certainly admin centric is something that very many companies are looking for and actively looking for, and tell me I can't find it. So the job market is wide open. Having those skills, demonstrating that experience, it's a very lively market.
It's encouraging. And Nitin asks a related question in chat. He asks, is there a big push from Salesforce to get more architects certified and get them in the ecosystem?
I can shed some light from like within the alliances and channels perspective. So we do, right? There's a lot of focus on on kind of enabling the architects, and that's our entire team. Like we're dedicated to, getting more people certified in these, B2B, B2C, and also really enabling them with the learning journeys we're putting together. And also the last year's initiative with the architect.success.com that we have, that Zane Turner's team's leading. It's really to bring that much needed attention on the architect persona, because you would see previously there's a lot on the developer role, and then there's, so much in terms of enablement and learning journeys. And now I think there's equal amount of focus on the architects too. And especially in the customer ecosystem, you would see them who started with one product in Salesforce have now, multiplied, and there's so much more. And they're leveraging Salesforce across so many different business units. They need an architect lens to look at it all with a 360 view and bring it together. So from Salesforce, there's a much needed boost and push, and that's what we're focusing on. And I think there's also a lot of scope in the ecosystem for architects.
Awesome. That's great to know. So there you go. It's going to be around for a while. And if you're a consultant already, or you're getting into consulting, it's a great base to have. And Taylor just shared another resource. What's an architect Salesforce blog? That's great. So we've got about 5 minutes left. I had a couple questions left. And this kind of gets into really, what do you love about these roles and why? So the question is, what's the most compelling reason that Salesforce professionals should explore this career path? What is there to love about it?
I think it feeds that desire to always have a push to grow. You're never going to know it all. And I feel like it helps satisfy a certain type of mind. So I used to be an athlete. So, doing high performance athletics, there was always a new year, a new challenge, and stretching myself and pushing myself with a consistency and a structure led me to take that same energy towards, work life. And I think when you have a high amount of energy and you don't necessarily want to have all of the responsibilities and be a full-blown entrepreneur, and manage a business yourself, Salesforce gives you a way to, continue that energy on and, also target and specialize where, you have the most enjoyment or the most satisfaction.
Yeah, those are great points. Thank you. All right, one more question. So when I was introducing you, I was talking about not just your technical experience, but each of you gives back to some amazing organizations. How do you balance your career growth with giving back to the ecosystem? What tips could you offer for folks that want to start giving back and aren't sure if their work-life balance will permit it?
That is a tough question. I think I'm continually trying to balance saying yes with saying no, but I've found that if you find organizations that really resonate with you, you have a passion for them, it becomes a much lighter lift. But being very careful in saying yes, as much as doing all the things that get, come along your way, sounds exciting and fun, especially if you're like me, it is a really good thing to be very mindful of what you connect with, because the learning, the professional growth, and then the lives we have outside of our professions with the volunteering is definitely a balancing act. So I think it's very much a personal journey for figuring that out and managing your own time. So, but looking to those things that really resonate with you personally is super important.
That's such a good point.
Being selective. I'm sorry, go ahead, Taylor.
I was just going to say that's such a good point about, finding things that enrich your values too, because that helps make work and make your life feel like it's not so heavy, whatever keeps you going. And whenever you can mix those and have, synchronization and harmony there, it's a plus.
Yeah, great points. I know I ask myself typically two questions when I get invited to participate in activities. One, does it align with my values? And if not, then the answer is thank you, but I think I'm going to pass on this opportunity. And two, does it align with my brand? Does it make sense given, what and my brand obviously is aligned with my values, so related question. But if it meets both those criteria, then I'll typically say yes, if I can fit that into the schedule, because obviously a finite amount of time, so you can only do so much. To Allison's point, you have to be selective and learn how to say no and do so gracefully. We've got another question, if we've got time for one more from in chat from David. He says, what if you're new to Salesforce and are generally interested in everything? How do you narrow your focus? And if your immediate goal is to be functional and effective?
I was going to jump on that. I recommend strongly the admin certification, the admin path, as the first place to start and to focus on. yes, you may be interested in the more technical things as a developer. You may be interested in becoming an architect, but the Salesforce admin certification specifically gives you that breadth of the platform that's really foundational to anything else out there. I don't know if others have other ideas on that, but I think it should be, I think Salesforce admin should be required across the board for every cert.
Is it okay if I elaborate on that question a bit?
Please.
Okay, I have my admin certification, and after I got my admin certification, I knew that I did really like everything. So now I'm doing a cohort for Marketing Cloud because it's a different platform, and I still like the service platform and the sales cloud, but I don't know what combination of those things that I should be focusing on in order to be effective. So I'm just kind of like all over the place.
Oh, that's a
Yeah.
good point.
I was just going to say that marketing, getting into a marketing cohort is amazing because that's an area that's very difficult to kind of DIY your way through that experience. So I think you were really fortunate and you picked up on that opportunity. Doesn't mean you're closing any doors, but do focus enough so that you learn enough where you're at and what you're taking on. As I think Divya alluded to earlier, and Taylor, it takes a while to go on this path. It's not an overnight kind of thing. So it is, I can understand David being kind of the kid in the candy store. When you come into Trailhead, it's just so much and it's all super awesome, but you've got to, take it one step at a time.
I just wanted to add one thing, David. So after the admin, I generally, this was my recommendation to any of my friends who worked on, right? If you do not come with an existing skill set that is relatable or transferable to Salesforce, and if you wanted to learn more about what the platform offers in terms of capabilities, do the sales service marketing. Those are like the most key and, like our top clouds and products that pretty much, I think 99 out of 100 customers would be leveraging and using. So that covers a broad range. And then depending, after you learn about the platform, then, you're like, do I want to be an admin or a developer or an architect? You can think more in terms of persona and then build skills accordingly. But I think you're on the right path choosing marketing. And then I would definitely say sales and service cloud to understand the core capabilities of Salesforce, like the core platform. And then from there, decide and do deep dives or navigate to different industries or anything.
Awesome. Does that help answer
Awesome,
the question,
thank
David?
you. Yes, it brings up other questions, but I don't want to hog up all the Salesforce. So I'll kind of find you guys on LinkedIn and bug you a little more later.
Awesome. That's why we do these. All right, folks, we're a couple minutes over, so we'll go ahead and close for the evening. Before I do, though, I really want to thank Taylor, Allison, and Divya for spending the past hour with us to educate us about B2B and B2C Solution Architect paths and talk about their experiences and share their expertise. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, it's been awesome.
Nice.
And thank you to all of you for spending time with us on your Wednesday evening. And hopefully we'll see you next week. In the meantime, please stay safe and have a great week.